NFL Week 14 is underway, and we're going to be looking at our streaming options once more because, Ed, we have the final time of looking at our bye weeks. But we have 4 teams inactive this week. Firstly, the Panthers. So with that last week's QB2 in Bryce Young, we don't have to have the conundrum of Dowdle or Hubbard. After that seems to have switched once more. We thought we got that nailed down, didn't we? But last week it's disarray again. Tech McMillan genuinely leaves a hole in rosters now if you've been playing because he has been really evolving over the last few weeks. And let's mention Jalen Coker. He does have some new found flex values, easy for me to say, that you could be missing as well. Patriots, no Drake May, QB3 on the season, Ed. That what we thought he was going to have a better season. That was not on the cards from our perspective. Travion Henderson, we've gone from probably a few weeks ago, you'd be glad he was out, so you didn't have to decide whether to sit him or play him or not. But he's out this week as well, RB18. Patriots receivers outside of Hunter Henry, you're not wanting to gamble who's going to catch a ball in New England. Giants, no Dart, Wandale Robertson, Slayton, Theo John, Singletary have all been semi-reliable of late. We spoke about Darius Slayton the other week as potentially having some good values we get towards the fantasy playoffs. Remember, the Giants have an excellent schedule for wide receivers when it gets to those playoffs. And then 49ers, CMC and Kittle, I am missing in several places. So that's going to really damage some of my teams this week. If you've been starting any Niners wide receivers, that's not moving with confidence. So we don't have to think about Ricky Pearsall for this week. And Brock Purdy only started 22% of leagues. So you are probably with a better option anyway. But if you are a little bit stuck at quarterback, especially maybe if you are without Drake May, who do you have for our consideration, Ed? It looks a familiar list.
Yes, regular viewers will wonder whether we just couldn't be bothered to think of any new quarterbacks this week because it's exactly the same lineup as last week, but for very good reason. T-Law, still just 54% rostered. He's QB12. He comes off the back of consecutive QB1 weeks for the first time this season, which is what we predicted last week. He's got the Colts this week, who's been relatively stingy against quarterbacks, conceding an average of just over 15 fantasy points per game. But it just feels like T-Law's hitting his groove at the moment. He should be a bit more highly rostered. He's got most of his weapons available to him again. And the Jags are playing some good football. So, T-Law is somebody to look at. Jacoby Brissett, still, I can't understand. He's still only 52% rostered. I mean, it's getting boring now, but we will keep on reminding you that he's available. He's just so consistent. Another 20-plus point haul against the Bucs last week. That's 7 top 12 QB weeks in a row. Right. If we look at week 6 to 13, Brissett is QB. Complete that.
8.
4. QB 4. Only Drake May.
2% rostered. I don't get it.
Only Drake May, Josh Allen, and Mahomes are ahead of him. Admittedly, he's got a tough assignment this week against the Rams, who are giving up the 7th fewest fantasy points per game, but he's had some tough assignments already and risen to the challenge. So, yeah, please get him rostered. And Tyler Shook, rostership's gone up slightly. Is he worth a look? I mean, possibly not, but I am going to make a case for it, and you might be in need this week. He's certainly not been afraid to throw the ball the last couple of weeks with 81 pass attempts, 56 of them completed. He was QB 12 against the Dolphins last week as he managed to connect for a couple of touchdowns. The reason I'm interested this week is because he has the Bucs, who are giving up the 5th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks this season and the most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks in the last 4 games, averaging 25.84 points. So if Shook is going to have a top 10 QB game, this is the one to get him plugged in for.
Please do take a moment to subscribe, to like, and to give us a share. We are closing in on our first 200 subscribers. So if you are watching, please just click that subscribe button now to take us towards 200 as we approach the end of the season. Ed, I've got some tight ends for our consideration as well if we are struggling, especially perhaps if you've been relying on Hunter Henry over the last few weeks. First up, Brenton Strange, not quite as odd as the low roster percentage of Jacoby Brissett, but Strange nonetheless, because from injury, tight end 4, tight end 7, yet only 64% rostered. He's very efficient with the receptions he gets. Indy, arguably the easiest tight end opponent he has had over these last few games as well. So I see a comfortable top 8 week again this week. So of all these options, if you're looking for a tight end, first port of call, check if Brenton Strange is available on your waiver wire. This feature was essentially sponsored by Mason Taylor for a while. We've not mentioned him for a bit because he's not been greatly consistent, especially since that Bengals demolition. But he has Miami this week, and they are given the second most fantasy points per game to fantasy tight ends, 16.55. So that is just too good to ignore. Yes, this is risky. He's been far from consistent, but there is a route to a top 12 week this week. This one is probably a little bit more tight end dependent, touchdown dependent, compared to the other options. And finally, I'm going back on what I said on our main show. I said that Dawson Knox, even given the fact that the Bengals are awful against tight ends, I wouldn't be starting him. It sounds like Dalton Kincaid probably isn't going to be available, still limited on Thursday. Any receiver limited with a hamstring that late in the week tends to then not see them not featuring. So I am going to concede to your Bengals pessimism / expertise, Ed, and say that Dawson Knox at 8% rostered, you're going to be wanting to start him quite possibly this week. And if you are struggling, he's pretty much almost guaranteed to be available in your lineups. Next streaming options, Ed. Of course, we turn to our streaming defenses.
Indeed, which is what we do with defenses. Of course, we stream them, starting off with the Steelers. 57% rostered. I'm surprised that their rostership is so low, as their defense 4, and have had a couple of monster weeks of late. 20 points against the Colts in week 9 and 22 against the Bengals a couple of weeks later. In fact, they've got an average score of a touch over 13 points over the last 5 weeks. Now, with them having the Ravens this week, I think it's going to go one of two ways. Either the Ravens will continue to struggle on offense, and the Steelers won't get much joy, will get a lot of joy, or the Ravens are going to absolutely go off. I think it's going to be famine or feast for Ravens this week, and nothing in between. But yeah, I do think the Steelers have a chance of putting up a good score this week against the Ravens, who've struggled on offense. Moving on to the Dolphins, 34% rostered. They've been more impressive of late, averaging 11 fantasy points across the last 3 weeks, including a season-high 15 points against the Bills in week 10. Now, they've got the Jets this week and Tyrod Taylor. I mean, you'd have thought a fairly enticing proposition for any defense, but, you know, Taylor was pretty impressive last week. QB7 as they beat the Falcons, probably surprisingly. So maybe a bit of a risky pick, but I do fancy the Dolphins to put up a decent score because I'm not sure I trust in the consistency of Tyrod Taylor and the Jets. Finally, the Washington Commanders, 32% rostered. Bit of a left field pick as they've been pretty poor on defense all season, especially from a fantasy perspective. They haven't hit double figures since week 5, but they have the Vikings this week. And whether it is JJ McCarthy or Max Brosmer, who had about as bad a debut as it is possible to have with those 4 picks, it gives the Commanders a chance to make hay against an offense that is really, really struggling. So Commanders could be a good shout from the left field as your defense this week.
Actually, yeah, I've picked up the Dolphins in a few places to swap out for my defense this week. So I'm hopeful that there. And you're exactly right. I can't see anything in between. I would be as confident in the Ravens scoring 35 plus points as I would be in them scoring fewer than 10 at this rate. Let's have a look then at some DFS options. We're going to be looking at our DFS red hot picks from a top game line perspective. This was our game of the week on the main show as well. 53.5. It's a tantalizing match. I'm genuinely really looking forward to watching this game over the weekend. And there's a few options from a fantasy perspective. So Josh Allen is always in contention. We've had a couple of down weeks, but we've also had those obligatory monstrous weeks. the appeal of Josh Allen this week is certainly from the point of view of the Bengals giving up so many yards to the across the ground and therefore fancy points to the rush game. So Josh Allen could have good value, and he could have one of those games where he gets a couple of rushing touchdowns. So he's definitely in contention for the exact same reason why James Cook is going to be in the mix as well. Ed, what Ty Johnson at 2,600? That's a tempting price, I think, to potentially save some money elsewhere.
Hugely tempting. We mentioned him in the main show. He'll get yards, and there's a chance of a touchdown. The Bengals just can't defend the run. So yeah, he would be a bargain basket pick to slot in somewhere.
Khalil Shakir, I said in the main show, from a redraft dynasty point of view, I'm not playing Shakir this week because he's been so inconsistent, and the Bengals defense have been a little bit better against the pass recently. But that price on FantasyGameday and Draft Kings, it's an all right. It's a price that is tempting that you could make case. And I know you were perhaps a bit more confident in Shakir than I was when we were speaking about this the other day. Is that a price that you would potentially be slotting him in if it worked for your build?
It's a cheap price, but as we discussed, the Bengals are very strong against wide receivers. So it's a risky pick. And I think there might potentially be better options. Even if the Bengals weren't so strong against the pass, I still don't trust Bills receivers.
Over to the Bengals then, and I'm quite interested in a Burrow Chase stack because we've got that Burrow discount with him coming back from injury. He looked good last week. The Ravens helped to make him look good, but he still got the job done in an efficient manner. I think a lot of the errors in his play or the slowness in his play was definitely due to having that time, which is not moving as much a minute coming back from the injury. That will probably be a little bit better this week, you'd have thought. So Burrow Chase is a stack I'm a little bit interested in. T. Higgins at £5,800 on FantasyGameday, 6,200 on DraftKings. Is he in contention for you from a DFS point of view this week, Higgins? Or do you think it is the volume that Chase saw last week, do you think that will continue and then maybe render Higgins a bit more risky?
Yeah, the Bills are strong against quarterbacks, aren't they? They don't give up many points to quarterbacks. Burrow, I'm not really considering him this week because I'm not hugely confident in his big score. But what the passes that he does connect will go to Chase, won't they? And I think the better value potentially is Chase Brown. I think that's decent value there in both DraftKings and FantasyGameday. The Bills do give up points to running backs. Chase Brown is, has been very consistent over the last few weeks, getting rushing yards, but also a number of receptions. I think he got 7 of 7 last week when Burrow was back. So he'll be heavily involved. So Chase Brown is someone for the first time this season, probably I'm quite interested in.
This is absolutely a game where you could see both teams going beyond 30. It's another one where maybe the Ravens just made the Bengals look better than they actually are last week. I suppose this will be the test, won't it, for Burrow, far more than it was last week.
Yeah.
Well,
I was just going to say, if we beat the Bills, I'll start to get a little bit excited. But okay. we'll lose and it'll all be horrible again.
Well, that is us done for week 14. Anything you would like to add at all there, Ed?
I don't think so. Looking forward to another week of NFL. Week 14, Mark, is running out. It's in front of our eyes.
Playoffs begin next week, so the best of luck getting those wins where you need to. Or, if because you're in too many leagues, best of luck avoiding the drop into the toilet bowl so you have a lovely 7th, 8th place finish so you can park one league for the rest of the season. That is all from us, though, so all we shall say now is bada bing, bada bye, and Malcolm, take us home.
You have been listening to the team from TH Fantasy Football. For more content, follow TH_fantasy_NFL on Twitter and Instagram.